Hi, welcome. This is Adam Feinberg, and you are listening to Harlem Stories. Today, I'm joined with my co-host, Mark Becker.
Great to be here.
Awesome. So today we're going to talk about the Bunny Theater and Columbia's current involvement in the neighborhood and in the building. So, a lot of people may not be aware, but I guess as you went around, somewhere around the turn of the century, roughly, there were a large number of theaters uptown being developed. Now, obviously, I think a lot of people now know about, and actually I was talking to one of our fellow agents in the elevator today about the Lowe's Wonder Theaters, and there were only 5 of them built throughout the entire city. Today, one of those has been restored, and that's the I forget the name of it, but it's on 177th Street. A huge, massive theater. It's been restored, but it was one of those Lowe's super theaters, and they have all sorts of concerts there today.
You talking about the one right off Broadway?
Correct. Yeah, that's the one.
Oh, yeah, there's an IHOP right next door to it. Yeah,
I don't know if the IHOP is still there anymore, but maybe.
But it's just shy of 181, I think.
Yeah, just a little shy over there. So, in any case, yeah, there were a lot of theaters that were built uptown during that period. The one I'm specifically talking about today, it was on Broadway midway between 147th Street and 148th Street in Hamilton Heights. It was named the Bunny Theater. Today, as you walk past it, you would never know that it was a theater at one point. In fact, you just think it's like a one-story building and that's it. It really doesn't look anything special. And the fact is, it's actually under a sidewalk shed now and scaffolding. So you really would have no clue what it was. But the Bunny Theater was designed by George Frederick Pelham, surprising because architect Thomas Lamb designed a majority of the theater spaces in Upper Manhattan. So this was one of those that, that was actually designed by, another architect. But the vast majority of them, I know there was one on 135, one on 147, there was one on 150th in Amsterdam.
Now, is the town of Pelham in Westchester and Pelham Parkway named after this guy?
I kind of suspect there could be family connections, but I don't think it was him specifically. Okay. Because he was an architect, but if you go back Old World New York, that wouldn't surprise me at all. As I mentioned, a lot of these theaters were opening up somewhere around the turn of the century. In December 1913 is when the Bunny Theater opened, and it was built for Carl Schultz, and that, a lot of people, especially Upper East Siders, might recognize that name as there's Carl Schultz Park, right? So he was an artist and creator of the popular comic strip Foxy Grandpa, which he signed with his pen name Bunny, and with that signature was also a drawing of a rabbit. Across the top of the facade was a stone inscription with the name Bunny and rabbit head on each side of the name. A lot of people, just over the years, they incorrectly attributed, thinking that the name of the theater was attributed to early film star John Bunny. But actually, no, it was actually from Carl E. Schultz in terms of his popular comic strip. So the theater was actually deceivingly large, especially as you walk past it today. You would never know it, but the theater originally had seating capacity of 1,300. It housed a roof garden fanned by the Hudson River, and patrons could also watch features using the projectors that they used on the interior of the theater on the screen as and it was like you're watching outdoors, naturally air conditioned from the breeze of the Hudson. So I thought it was pretty cool. In less than a year, the Bunny program guide had 1,500 subscribers to keep potential patrons up to date on forthcoming shows. So that rooftop theater portion didn't last all that long. And the Bunny Theater kind of changed hands and kind of changed direction a number of times. So in 1930, the Bunny Roof Theater, had a total of 702 seats. And that only went on for a handful number of years from that point forward. In 1941, it became the Dorset Theater. In 1958, it became the Tapia Theater. In 1978, it became the Nova Theater. And actually, I've seen on blogs that were like updating, on like local history and whatnot, the Nova family is actually still in the city. As of maybe 10 years ago was the last comment that I might have seen. So the family that had owned the theater during like the 80s and 90s,
they're still around.
Yeah, they're still around. So, but in August of 2002, the Nova Theater was closed and ultimately it was gutted. Jesus Nove went on to operate the Coliseum Theater, also known as the Archeo Coliseum Theater. And you probably know this, Mark, having lived in Washington Heights, that Archeo Coliseum Theater on West 181st and Broadway. That was actually recently demolished.
Wow.
That was, the family was involved in that as well. When they closed the Bunny Theater, though, in late 2002, early 2003, somewhere around that point, a 99-cent store opened in the gutted remnants of the theater. And I remember going into that 99-cent space, and you really would have had no clue that there was a grand theater space there. They had changed it so radically and it had been entirely gutted. By the summer of 2009, the decorative facade was taken down, and around that same time that Columbia purchased the entire stretch of the west side of Broadway between 147th and 148th. Now, Columbia had purchased the Bunny Theater space as well as others, and they... I know at some point I remember reading that they agreed to, set aside that, that facade piece that had the decorative element of the Bunny Theater and retain that, for history. I have not seen anything, since. But, during that period, where Columbia bought, it was the entire block of 147 to 148th Street. The northern half, and let's just kind of break the block into half. The northern half of the block, Columbia built a brand new HDFC co-op. And they did this because this was basically built for the residents that were going to be displaced as a result of their new campus expansion in the 120s and up to the 130s.
Got it.
So ultimately, that's how this new HDFC came to be. And I know as of even a few months ago, there was a posting on the building, announcing, that there were going to be still a few apartments available there under lottery. And, it was, I don't remember the prices, but I think a one bedroom was like $200,000 in a brand new construction apartment.
Sounds like a deal.
Yeah. I mean, granted, there were like asset limits and income restrictions.
You got to thread the needle to get in there.
Right. Exactly. So it was a really kind of complicated situation. But if you qualify, I mean, hey, you're in a prime location there as far as, Upper Manhattan is concerned.
Sure.
That was pretty convenient. But a few additional units were constructed in that, and that's what I'm talking about with the lottery apartments. But on the base level of this brand new building, there was also a church that needed to be located as a result of the campus expansion as well. Right now, they've been operating on an existing structure that was on the southern half of this plot of land between 147 and 148. But ultimately, the goal was to have them relocate to the brand new building. And I think they are like in transition mode now. I'm not exactly sure where they are, but they actually have technically two spaces at the moment between 147 and 148. I think as they move their space. I think it'll obviously the long-term goal is to get them out of the southern portion of that block,
Right.
and move them into the new one. And obviously, anybody that's been paying attention, Gin Ramen, I think, set up their fourth or fifth location in Manhattan, and that's the location.
You a big ramen fan?
Yeah, on occasion. So yeah, Gin Ramen was named as one of those top-rated cheap eats restaurants in the city. As of this recording, Columbia hasn't announced what they'll be doing with the southern half of this block, which includes the former Bunny Theater.
Right.
So inquiring minds want to know, what they're going to do. Now, Columbia, they were pretty open with their plans for phase one of their new campus expansion, and this included identifying the first 5 buildings in the plan, which have now been completed, or at least largely completed. But that represents a small portion of Columbia's total plan. So obviously, since then, Columbia is now in process of adding building number 6, which is a residential tower on the corner of Broadway and 125th Street, which will also have commercial space on the ground floor. And they're going to wind up bringing back the McDonald's that used to be located on this ground. Now, the McDonald's they did have a drive-through, and the drive-through will be gone, but at least McDonald's will be back there.
Wait, so they raised the building. I think there's nothing there now, right?
No. Actually, they're largely done with the tower. Yeah. In terms of the McDonald's over there, yeah, they sold the property to Columbia, and they were promised in return, retail space to reopen a McDonald's. But obviously, yeah, they've lost that drive-in feature.
Right.
So yeah, right now the new building is just looking like the exterior is topping off, and it looks like they're done with a lot of the facade. I believe it's going to be 2 towers adjacent to each other. So I think what they might be doing is, constructing the first tower and then constructing the second tower, because they have there's a plot of land in between, and I'm pretty sure I remember, reading about it as 2 towers over there, and that's going to be, the housing for students, potentially some faculty as well, which I guess it kind of makes sense, because honestly, would you want to be next to the 125th Street elevated train station? I'm like, as a condo? Yeah, I'm thinking
Get those double pane windows.
Yeah, I mean, granted, if you're paying for a condo in Manhattan, I'm like, I don't think you want to be looking out directly in front of the elevated train. So honestly, I'm a big supporter of using this as dorm room housing.
Yeah.
But they've been pretty open with the community on the relocation of the existing residential housing that was going to displace people as a result of that new campus expansion. And this was the construction of 3599 Broadway at 148th and Broadway.
Got it.
It's a newly constructed HDFC co-op with a church that also needed to be relocated, and that retail space. So that leaves the open question, what about the south half of the block? In the more than 10 years that Columbia has owned this property, they still haven't given any public guidance as what they're looking to do with this property. And I live right over there. So, for me, I'm like, I walk past it almost every day, and, I'm wondering, I'm like, what are they going to do with this?
When are they legally required to? I mean, I notice usually when there's construction, it says, residential or commercial right next to it.
They haven't gotten to construction. Well, first off, part of this this southern half of the block is still occupied by that church. They have not vacated fully yet. But even when they do, that still leaves, the question mark of what are they going to do and when, and they haven't announced it. So, yeah, once there's actual plans going forward that have been announced, and they actually start doing construction or reconstruction or demolition, then you'll actually see the sign that you're talking about.
Right.
But until then, we don't quite know. But the need for this temporary home is now gone, for the church. So, obviously, we're all asking what's next. Columbia owns a large portion of Morningside Heights and Manhattanville. Their medical program is based in Washington Heights, and they even have an athletic field in Inwood. But they have no significant presence in Hamilton Heights along Broadway other than on this block. So if Columbia continues to need to expand beyond their Manhattanville campus, Hamilton Heights may very well be their next target location, especially along Broadway.
Huh.
So kind of makes sense, since they have such a large presence along Broadway from 110th Street on north, and they kind of skipped over Hamilton Heights. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
They're annexing all of northern Manhattan.
Yeah, seriously. Well, I guess that's what happens when you don't have to pay property taxes, right?
There you go.
All right. Well, thank you again for joining us with another great episode of Harlem Stories.
Thanks a lot.